The live stream going. One moment.
Okay.
You're live.
Right. Thank you very much, Cody. Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Adam Herkey. I am chair of the Community Board 6 Land Use and Waterfront Committee. Let us begin this meeting this evening. So it is February 22nd, 2021. Again, I am Adam Herkey, and tonight we are joined by our Assistant District Manager, Cody Osterman. Members of the public, you can raise any questions or comments that you have through the Q&A feature of Zoom. If there's time following the committee's discussion, we will field questions from the public. Okay, I believe Sandy is taking minutes for this evening. Thank you very much, Sandy. Again, if you have not signed up via the doodle poll to take minutes for future meetings, I highly encourage you to do so. Okay, if you have any questions about the doodle poll, please seek out help from the office. Okay, with that, let's go ahead and take attendance. Cody, can you please begin the roll call?
Okay. Committee members, I will call your name. Please unmute yourself and say present. Jim Collins. Adam Hartke. Molly Hollister. Kavitha Matthew.
Present.
Sandy McKee.
Present.
Wells Magali.
Present.
Jean Santoro.
Here.
Larry Shire. Ann Seligman. Lou Sapersky. Sandra Sherrod.
Present and accounted for.
Letty Simon.
Present.
Kathy Thompson.
Present.
And I see Ann has just joined. Got Ann.
Sorry.
And Larry has also just joined, bringing you to 10 of 13 members present and a quorum.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Cody. Thank you all to the members for joining us this evening. We have an action-packed agenda. And so tonight's agenda was distributed by Cody ahead of time by the board office and appears on the screen before you. If there is no objection, we will adopt the agenda as stated. Members of the committee, if you object to adopting the agenda, you may raise your hand through Zoom. Okay, seeing no objections, tonight's meeting agenda is adopted. All right, minutes. The minutes from the January 25th meeting were distributed ahead of time by the board office. Thank you, Letty, for writing those up. If there's no objection, we will adopt the minutes as drafted. Members of the committee, if you object to adopting the minutes, you may raise your hand through Zoom. Okay, seeing no objections, the minutes from the January 25th meeting are adopted. They will soon be available on the CB6 website. Okay, everyone, there are always some ground rules. So again, we've been doing this for going on almost a year now. So, so just to reiterate, no one may speak until the floor is granted. Committee members, if you have a question about committee business or a motion, please raise your hand via Zoom. If you have any issues, please contact Cody. The chat function, please do not use the chat function. There we go. That's all I'll say about that. When a committee member is given the floor to speak, I will identify you and you can unmute yourself so that you can speak. We are required by executive order to create a verbatim transcript of the meeting. So please keep your questions and comments succinct and germane to the discussion. All right, so let's move into tonight's committee business. All right, so our agenda for this evening is quite a packed one. So we're going to start out from updates from the ESCR team. And then we're going to discuss more about the comprehensive plan proposed by the speaker, the 3 bills relating to the helicopters, and then if time allots, we will discuss a little bit more about our long-term vision for the waterfront. So So just to sort of set expectations, there is a lot to talk about. We pretty much are having the 4 food groups of this committee, and so we might not be able to address everything this evening, and so we will potentially break things up and discuss them later in other committees or at future meetings. So with that said, I'll stop talking and we'll let our presenters present. All right, so the ESCR team, you're up.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Adam. This is Q Amiri from DDC, Coastal Resiliency Unit. I'll just give a really quick intro, and I'll let my colleagues from AKRF and Pentagram team walk us through very quickly on our design update here. So last month, where we left off, we presented wayfinding sort of resiliency, interpretive resiliency design for the signage in the park, including this project. Had some couple of good comments and feedback from this group, from the community members and Community Board 6 folks here. That was very helpful. We also had the same presentation and feedback from Community Board 3, so we combined all the feedback and tried to incorporate as much as we could. Went back to our partner agencies with Parks and DOT. A number of those requests or questions we weren't able to incorporate, and other shortlist that we were able to is included in this design that you'll see tonight. Very quickly with that is what we were able to incorporate was there was some feedback about the size and the legibility of the sign. So we were able to enlarge the size of the actual sign and also the font. And we worked on background color, so it's a little more legible. And we worked on the language that was a little too technical perhaps and less educational, which was not our intent. So we worked in some more language there, and we'll show you some graphics pretty quickly. With that, Johari, Rory, I'll hand it off to you folks to walk us through, and then we can take questions after that.
Great. So Rory, I'll hand it off to you so you can walk through what we've updated.
Great. So this first sign, the resiliency introduction sign, the major change from the last community board presentation that we gave is first the background color of the sign. It's sort of been gone from being white text on a dark background to being dark text on a lighter background. And we've also added a secondary tone. So gray for the background and then white being introduced into the graphics to help them pop out a little bit more. We've also increased the size of the labels on the diagrams, the font size for legibility, as well as the font size of the body text and the title. And the line weight of the diagrams has also been increased. For the component signs, we increased the height of these signs from 18 inches to 24 inches, so that they're consistent with the introductory sign. And this also leaves a little more space for the increased font size and also some more breathing room for the diagrams so that the sign isn't completely covered with diagram and text to make it a little bit more approachable. And those same adjustments kind of apply to the next 3 signs that we're going to look at, all of the component information signs. And the higher contrast of the diagrams, the colors of the diagrams, is supposed to help increase their impact and make them as legible as possible. The construction of the sign is more or less the same as it was, just the overall dimensions have increased.
And then I know we briefly touched upon sign locations last time, but this is essentially just a overall plan of the project area showing the 2 or 3 dozen signs that we have scattered throughout. And they're located roughly at points where folks would first enter the flood protection system. So either entering at, in the CB6 region, entering along Avenue C, East 18th Street, Stycove Park, and then at Astor Levy Playground. One thing that we are looking for today is a resolution so that we can proceed with PDC submission. But other than that, if there are any questions or if there are slides that you'd like us to circle back to, we can walk through them during the question period.
Okay, Anne, I see your hands up.
Yeah, just really quickly looking at the, kind of difference between like what we asked for and what you did. One of the kind of obvious mismatches there is anything about either a QR code or availability in other languages, which could, of course, probably be achieved through a QR code. So I understand why there are space issues in terms of, providing languages, which is why it would be great if you could you have a QR code or something that says for additional information, go to the website. Like, it does not take up more room than all those agency icons. So I just like to throw that out there. Thank you.
Yeah, I can speak to that. Hi, Ann. This is Q from DDC. That was definitely one of our goals. However, when we really sat down and talked through it, and one thing for everybody to, I don't know if everybody remembers, but we have to make sure that this is something that can live on beyond the life of sort of this project timeframe here that we're working on. And a lot of these things have to be coordinated with multiple different units at various agencies. And specifically, it's important to make sure that we're delivering something that we can hand off to the agencies, to their maintenance and operations and maintenance units, that it's within their capabilities. So the QR code was one of the ideas that we had based on the request that we got to provide translated signs. The sign itself, as you can see, there's not enough space to have multiple different languages in one sign. And to add additional signs on that pole, that's not a possibility either, because of visual clutter and vandalism or potential issues in the right of way. But the QR code came up as a creative way around that to connect to the websites, the project website that provides that translation option. However, the sticker itself, with weather, with vandalism, and also with long-term maintenance, whenever the website gets updated, somebody beyond the DDC team in a few years' time has to be sure to connect all that together. And in a long-term plan, that just didn't seem very there's no means and methods right now within the existing system that our agencies have to be able to manage that in the future. So we have to make sure that we can provide something that the city agencies can maintain after we walk away from the project.
I guess I would say, don't let the enemy be the perfect of be the enemy of the good. I think having something, even if it was not other languages, but if you just kind of designated a website that says, here's where to get information about this project, and even if it wasn't a great website and people had to use Google Translate itself, I feel like what we are doing is a disservice to the very multicultural and touristy community that uses it, and I would like to see it be more inclusive. I understand the issues in maintaining our website, but I wish you'd take another look.
Yeah, no worries. Maybe this is something we can include in the resolution. Okay, Larry, your hand's up.
Yes, first, in response to what Ann was speaking about regarding using Google Translate, someone who has a smartphone can take a picture of the sign and use the Google Translate to provide an instantaneous translation without having to go to an outside website. And that might be sufficient. without getting really involved here. So I just point that out. I do appreciate there is a need for access to the information if you don't speak English, though. The second thing I wanted to mention was that there ought to be a date which is commemorated as to the completion of this project, both on the interceptor building and on the flood wall itself, a cornerstone, something like that. It's a small thing, a detail, but it is something that I think will be useful in future days. And the third thing I wanted to ask about, and maybe I missed it, was about directional signage to the ferry landing, and putting those directional signs on columns of the FDR drive on the outside where there's no signage presently indicated here. And I really want to push hard because that is more important than having these explanatory signs, which are nice, but not vital.
Sure, I can speak to that. This is Q again, DDC. Going backwards, directional signage, absolutely noted. So this signage was specifically a request that came up during the Public Design Commission's final design review towards the end of 2019. And also we heard from the community in various forums that it would be nice to have some sort of educational signage in place that talks about the protection system itself with some climate resiliency, climate change, educational component to it that explains what a floodgate is, what is this interceptor gatehouse that we're standing next to. So it's more to explain the components of the flood protection system, not necessarily directional signage and wayfinding to the ferry or, Stuyvesant Cove Park or things like that. So those directional signage, that's standard signage for the agencies, whether it's DOT, parks, EDC, whoever's managing those properties or those areas. So we'll definitely relay that back to the city team and go back to make sure that EDC gets that comment and let you know.
Well, as long as you incorporate both, I'm on board, and also make the recommendation about having a cornerstone or the date of the construction.
Yeah, and the date thing. So, and I just saw that in the comment box too. These signs will not go up until construction is finished, until the project is done. So these are not construction signs. These are again added interpretive signage for the flood protection itself. So once the project is done, then the agencies that are overseeing that particular area, most likely parks or DOT, they would their units would install these signs after we're done with the project. So we're just tasked with designing them right now and handing off the specifications.
Great, thank you. And we'll go to the last question with Letty.
It's a very simple question. I wanted to know, with a lot of copy, why, and for visual acuity, why the font was sans serif instead of having foot.
Rory, I would have to defer to you, or maybe we can get back.
It's just a graphic design
Sure.
question.
Yep, I can jump in there. So sans serif typefaces are a lower contrast, meaning that they're that's not thick thin, right? If you use a serif typeface on a signage application like this, the thinner parts of the letters can kind of start to disappear. So in most wayfinding, the standard is sans serif.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, thank you all. So the ESCR team is looking for a resolution before their presentation before the Public Design Commission. Does anyone want to make a motion? All right, Sandy.
I make a motion that we support this proposal for signage.
Excellent. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, Letty, thank you very much. Okay. Cody, do you want to take a vote?
Yes, I will, committee members, I will call your name and please declare in favor.
I'm sorry, can we just confirm that it will, that the resolution will include concerns about, the concerns that had been raised in during this meeting?
Yep, Sandy, please.
I think the resolution needs to include our concern that we have access for additional languages through whatever means possible, and that we should just add that into our resolution as it's written. That we look for some other method for including alternate ways to access other languages.
Yeah, I mean, and that might include Braille and other accessibility issues. Like, I mean, I don't know, but I just think we need to address it. Like, we need to say we want it to be more accessible.
So that if we add that into our resolution, we would still move forward with the resolution, but add that as one of our resolves.
Okay. I don't see a problem with that. All right. Do we need to second or re-vote, or do we just go straight to the vote?
There was a second on the floor, so if you want
Okay.
to just proceed, that's fine.
Okay, I'm fine to proceed.
All right. Jim Collins. Is Jim joined? Adam Hartke.
Aye.
Molly Hollister. I don't think Molly's joined. Kavitha Matthew.
Yes. Aye.
All right. Sandy McKee.
In support.
Wells Magali.
In support.
Gene Santoro.
Aye.
Larry Shire.
Aye.
Ann Seligman.
Aye.
Lou Sapersky. Sandro Sherrod.
Yay.
Letty Simon.
Aye.
Kathy Thompson.
Aye.
All right, that's 10 in favor, no opposed, no abstentions, and no not entitled.
Excellent. Thank you. Well, if Lou was here, he would have said yo, so that would have complete the whole circle. So that would. So anyway, do we have any volunteers to write the resolution? All right. Okay. Well, we will address this later. So we'll just go ahead and move the agenda. So we'll address this at the end of the meeting. Okay. Thank you very much regarding the signage portion. All right, Desiree, I believe the floor is yours.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for having us, Adam.
Thank you, Q.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Adam, I'll write it. I'll write it. I won't promise to get it done by next Monday, but I'll write it.
Oh, okay. Sounds good. Thanks, Ann.
Thanks, Adam. I'm going to share my screen now.
Great. Thank you.
Okay. All right, great. You can see that?
Yes. Yeah.
Great. All right, perfect. Good evening, everyone. Thank you again for joining the escrow portion of the CB6 Land Use Committee. Again, my name is Desiree Gazzo, HNTB Lero, the PMCM consultant for DDC for the Esker Coastal Resiliency Project. So a few slides we have for you tonight. It's a shorter presentation, but we did want to provide an update on the upcoming construction work and a couple of other, small updates. So really quickly, we'll go through the pre-construction and construction phase updates. We'll move on to a few construction advisories, which we've released recently, and then we'll jump into a couple of points on the what we've heard slide. So again, we have our project areas, which we show every month. And then the overview of contracts. So for project area 1, as many of you already know, we had our bid opening on the 8th of February. So now those bids are under review. I know we received 1 or 2 questions in the inquiry tool regarding the bids. There's not much to say, except for right now they're under review. and we'll be able to provide a little bit more information, as that review continues and once we get a clearer idea of who the lowest bidder is. So there will be a marginal impact to the overall timeline, which Jeff Markleese from DDC has spoken about the last time we were here, and East River Park will remain open through spring 2021. So for project area 2, as you can very well see, we are in construction on what we call kind of the phase 1 of the project, which is the Astor Levy Playground and Stycove Park around Solar 1 area. So we'll have some maps in the next day the work is a little bit clearer. And then parallel conveyance will be released for bid in the upcoming weeks with the bid opening in early 2021. So those are the updates on those contracts. So the anticipated activities for PA2, we created a new map here, which I think a little bit clearly shows where the contractor is working right now. That gives you a good idea. Again, it's just representational, but I think that's a bit clearer than the map that we had up there previously. So, we have a lot of activities that have completed, still in progress are the kind of Solar 1 construction fencing, which for this part of the work is pretty much set up, but that will kind of change as the work progresses in that area. The night work on the FDR Drive West Service Road between East 23rd and 25th Street is continuing. The traffic detour in that area, which we'll show you in the next couple of slides, and then under the FDR at East 23rd Street is also continuing. And then we have some upcoming work for the FDR East Service Road, which is the detour that was associated with that. And then in the Solar 1 area, all behind the fence will be the preparation for the wall footing adjacent to the Solar 1 building. And then throughout the area, as you can see, it's not just, located in only the Solar 1 area and only the Astor Levy area. There's the utility relocations that are occurring in the kind of the path of where the wall will be constructed. So again, just a reminder, I believe we showed these last time, but this is the night work detour for vehicular traffic at East 25th Street. So we have, a little picture here of what that closure looks like. There are flaggers and personnel there to help direct traffic. And then the detour map to the left here, which shows the right-hand turn on East 25th, and then the left on 2nd Avenue, and then depending where you're going from there. And again, we put out an advisory on this, and we will put out a night work advisory reminder every Friday with the bulletin until the night work is over. And then for those of you who are in the East 23rd Street area, you will notice the traffic detour and new traffic patterns there. Very difficult to capture in a diagram. However, we did try the best that we could here. Please note this is not exactly what it looks like. However, it is meant to be that you take caution in this area, follow the directions that the flaggers are providing you, vehicles, pedestrians, bicyclists, please use caution when you're around this area. There is, quite a bit of traffic coming from multiple directions. Again, we have increased the flaggers in the area and been coordinating with DOT on the signage in this area. And I think it's shaped up from when it kind of first opened. So again, we tried our best here with the detour map or with the new traffic pattern map, but please just know to take caution in this intersection as we complete as we work through this portion of the construction. The Greenway Detour, for those who use the Greenway Detour, you will notice that it has now closed between East 20th and East 23rd Street. Again, depending on if you're heading northbound or southbound, We put out this advisory with the map that, kind of shows you where you need to navigate to get around that detour. Again, there is still local access between East 37th Street and East 25th Street. However, there is not through Greenway traffic to East 20th Street. So you will have to make other accommodations to get around that area. The signage is up. Again, this detour will change as we move through construction, as PA1 gets on board. So we will be issuing updated advisories in coordination with DOT as the work moves and progresses forward. And that goes for all of the detours that we're showing here tonight. I know there are always many questions about the Avenue C detour under the FDR Drive between 18th and 20th Street and between 18th and 23rd Street. That work is still ongoing coordination with DOT, DDC, and the contractor. Again, that was not originally in the contract, so it is going to take a little bit of time for us to work through that. We are, again, still actively coordinating. We have our DOT folks on with us today as well, if there are any questions that we can answer. However, this is something that is just going to take a little while to work through. But it is still on the table, and we are still working through that. So the pedestrian detour in Stycove Park, we also issued an advisory about this. So as you know, kind of promised through in keeping the park open as much as possible. The north portion of the landscaped part of Stycove Park is mostly open. There is a little bit of construction there at the northernmost part before you get to the paved area in Solar One. That has to do with the work at Solar One. But nonetheless, most of that northern portion of Stycove Park is open, and you just have to, if you are a pedestrian, you can go up, walk most of it, and then you have to turn around and come back just a bit south of where where we're showing it here. It's about at this area right here. So for those of you who use, who walk around there in the morning, I have several mornings, and it is quite lovely in the morning. So pedestrians, again, can access that. And it's just the bicycles that are detoured because of the Greenway. And again, if there are any changes or if the contractor needs to access any part for a limited amount of time, again, the detour, a new detour will be reissued and the signs will be updated on site. Okay, so now moving into the what we've heard section, just a couple of items based on some of the comments that we received the last time we were here, and a couple of items that we've received through the inquiry tool. Again, that section 3 in MWBE, we know that's very important, and we are working on a few kind of smaller outreach events for 2021. Potentially, virtual and in person. So we're working with the Office of Diversity and Industry Relations at DDC, and then with our sub-consultant, Bowie Studios, and that coordination is ongoing. Environmental monitoring. There have been continued questions about, having that information public. Just a reminder again that we will have quarterly reporting, and DDC will report exceedances findings to the public after an investigation is completed, as typical for DDC projects. And we are happy to also report that there have been no exceedances to date. I did mention the Avenue C detour under the FDR Drive, so I'm not going to touch on that one again. And then we know that there was a comment last time regarding the project schedule and timeline. Again, that the schedule and phasing is still under coordination with the contractor. However, we are working on some graphics to incorporate into the next presentations that we have here. So that is, we did hear you, and we are, working towards that. And then the website, we are actually continuing to update the website, we've put the advisories, or we'll be putting the advisory maps on there to bring that a little bit more forward as we're now moving into construction. So please do check back on the website and provide us any comments you have, again, through the inquiry tool or through Nadine, our CCL, who, if you're on site, you'll see her there. And I think that's all we have for tonight. So we can open the floor up to questions.
Excellent, excellent, Desiree. Thank you very much. I'm glad to hear about the updated construction timeline, or excuse me, the construction alerts. Looking forward to seeing the graphics. That was a big sticking point with members, in our district. So looking forward to the next meeting. If you haven't been on the site, it's quite interesting. If you see sort of any issues, please be sure to visit the website or to email the board office, or why not do both? Okay, with that said, Larry?
Yes, could you go back to the very interesting graphic where you show the routing of the traffic at 23rd Street and Avenue C?
This one?
Yes. I appreciate this. This is really quite informative, but I do want to confirm that the roadway, the northbound roadway on Avenue C, will be rerouted considerably as you've depicted it there.
The northbound roadway, sorry, I'm just getting my bearings. The northbound roadway on Avenue C will be rerouted. It is correct. And Ahmed, I know you're on, so if you want to speak to this a little bit more, but I think are you just confirming that that is how it is now, Harry? Sorry, just.
This is, this is Ahmed. It is actually, that's how it is now. The northbound traffic on Avenue C, as you see going north, the right lane goes straight and the left lane turns left on East 23rd Street. So, answer to your question, yes, this is how it is depicted.
Okay, since I've not driven this recently, I was trying to understand whether the right-hand curve just before the gas station has been eliminated, and one proceeds straight right into the intersection of 23rd Street.
Going north, the right-hand turn. Okay, yeah, that goes under the FDR. And instead of making the right, in the past, you used to make a right turn on East 23rd and then a left turn on the East Service Road. Now, because we're doing some work at this location, you have to go straight, as you see that curvy line, to go between the two columns of the FDR. There is a temporary bypass lane that was created for that purpose during construction, when we do construction on the service road. I hope that makes it clear.
Well, it'll be clear when I get there.
Absolutely. If you have any other questions, please don't hesitate to contact Nadine or Desiree or myself. Thank you.
Sorry, the mute button. Is there any other questions from the committee? Okay, there's a Q&A asked by Scott Baker. What happens to the East River Park after spring 2021? Will there be an alternative route for biking, walking, etc.? Is that on the website currently?
No, after spring 2021, once PA1 kicks into action, the Greenway will be closed in the PA1 area. And then I believe, and Ahmed can jump in as well, that will facilitate a greater closure of the Greenway in PA2. I don't think we don't have the plans for that open right now, but if you remember earlier, we had kind of the Houston Street detour to 1st and 2nd Avenue. That was the original plan in the PA2 set. And we have been looking at that on a more localized level as we move forward with construction. So for PA2, and Ahmed, please jump in, but I think depending on what area of the park we're working in and where we need to have access, there may be, again, that greenway may be open here and there for like local traffic.
So if we're talking about the bike lane detour around East Houston, yeah, that was initially set up to detour northbound bike traffic around East Houston going to First Avenue, then uptown on First Avenue. We didn't see a need to do this now, to detour bike lane, and we allowed all the bike traffic to go as far north now up to East 20th Street. In the past, they used to go through up to East 23rd and go through, but because of the construction that is going on now, now the traffic stops at East 20th, and that detour is around East 20th to First Avenue, uptown on First Avenue. If that answers your question.
If I could jump in. Hi, everybody. This is Neg Lakou from DOT, Senior Project Manager for ESCR and Resiliency Planning. Just to touch on the original question, when the park is closed, we are hoping to have the Avenue C protected bike lane implemented this late spring, early summer, which is why exactly we're working so hard to get the 18th to 20th Street connection. So in terms of when the park is closed, the Greenway Detour will be accessing Avenue C through Houston Street, and making, cyclists can go north and south through Avenue C.
Excellent. Thank you, Nick. And if you are interested in learning more about the effort of the Avenue C Detour, Gene Committee Transportation often, and he's been engaged, his committee has been actively engaged with the SCR team on making this reality. Okay. All right. So I'm going to toss the floor over to Claude, and then we'll ask one question from the public, and then we're going to move forward. Claude, the floor is yours.
Oh, okay. The diagram that Lawrence asked about, when you access the gas station, is there a pattern for coming back out of the gas station and going directly to 23rd Street? Because I don't see it there.
Sure, and right, Ahmed, I don't think this shows the gas station detour. When you go out the gas station, there's like a little bypass lane.
Correct.
Over here.
That puts you back on the northbound Avenue C.
Right now, but don't go there. Come back to where the garage is on 23rd Street. Right. Going straight across. Can you now go straight across and access 23rd Street?
No, there is a detour now. You see that right turn?
Yes.
That puts you on the East Service Road. And if you need to go back on 23rd, you have to take that U-turn lane.
Okay.
Yeah, and come back toward East 23rd Street.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, we're going to address the current comment or the current questions in the chat, and we're going to move the agenda. So we'll start first with Alice. So she's asking about pedestrians. Where can people walk? And so the answer to this is you have to cross Avenue C, take the detour on Peter Cooper side, and then walk back down at 20. Correct?
Yes, I'm just pulling up that slide. Oh, did I not? Yeah,
there you go.
Okay. Yeah.
Great.
So this is where you have to cross, and whether it's the northbound side or the southbound side, right now you're actually crossing here on the southbound side, but this will vary depending on where the construction is exactly in the intersection. But you follow the flaggers, cross, and then head down again, Avenue C.
Excellent, thank you. The next question is about the power lines at Stycove Park. Do you know where the power lines are in the path of the flood wall being relocated in Stycove Park?
I'm going to punt that one to Ahmed.
Smart.
I can answer yes. Yes, there are some electrical conduits and oil statics, which are major main feeds, are going to be, we call it wing back, meaning they're going to be shift out of the lane where the wall footing will be installed and the piles will be driven. So they have to shift, and all the work that you see now happening there is to pinpoint the location of these power lines, put them on a survey, on a CAD drawing, and overlay them on the proposed footing. So we make sure when we do this pile driving and install the footing, they are not going to interfere. So this is going to keep going for the next 2 to 3 weeks to get all the data, put them on a drawing, and lay a roadmap for our future work.
Excellent. Ahmed, do you know which direction they're being shifted?
East, toward the east. You know, the oil statics toward the east. There are dead lines on the west side of the footing, will be completely removed.
Okay, yeah. That works. Thank you. Sure. So, thank you. And so finally with Scott's question again. So he wants to know more about the detour of the Greenway. Do you know when that sort of the detour is going to be established? I think the best answer to this is probably to attend the Transportation Committee to discuss in earnest. But if you guys do know when you're sort of working towards a more definitive timeline of the detour, can you let us know?
Are you referring to the East River Park, the Greenway Detour?
Yes, please.
Yeah. So I mean, we've been consistent as Desiree mentioned. This is Jeff from DDC. Sorry. As Desiree mentioned at the beginning, we just had a bid opening for Project Area 1 on the 8th. So now we have to go through the process of formally procuring the contractor. Once they're, get the proper permits, they would have control of the site. There is a commitment to maintain approximately 40% of East River Park open at all times. However, we do anticipate that the Greenway will be closed once the contractor is fully in control of the park, minus that 40%. So that would be, again, we're estimating right now late spring of this year. But as we get closer, we will, of course, come back to this committee as well as Community Board 3.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you once again to the ESCR team for these updates. We look forward to seeing some more updates next month. Best of luck in the construction. May the weather be in your favor. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Okay, so we are now going to move the agenda along to the portion that really fits into sort of the long range planning and land use portion of this committee. So as a lot of you guys may have seen over the last few months, there's been a proposal of the Speaker's office about the Planning Together Committee, a new comprehensive planning framework for New York City. And so what I'm hoping we do for this portion of the meeting is that we'll just sort of have like a committee discussion. So Cody and I forwarded a lot of materials that we've sort of gathered, that other committee members have gathered. Thank you very much, Kavitha. And other community groups have actually forwarded to the office. And so, what's really sort of been interesting about this whole process is that I think it sort of brought all sides together, all the different perspectives of land use in terms of that everyone doesn't really care for ULURP and something needs to be done. But what is it, and when does that take fold and when does that take shape? The idea of a comprehensive plan in New York City is not a new concept whatsoever. I remember in grad school at the University of Cincinnati, looking through the big sort of borough books, or part of the earlier efforts of a comprehensive plan. In fact, Cincinnati, if you didn't know, was the first city council to adopt a citywide comprehensive plan. So maybe New York City Council will follow in Cincinnati's footsteps, 80 years later. It remains to be seen. So what we did, earlier in the week is we forwarded a lot of materials, and we hope you had a chance to sort of review and take notes. So we were keeping sort of a running log that Kavitha and Ann had contributed to, and I know others have sort of had notes as well. And we have George Janes in attendance tonight, who's been a valuable resource, not just for this committee, but for this board. And so I thought this would be a sort of a good opportunity where we could just have sort of an open discussion as a committee, sort of about the proposal, some of the things that concern us, some of the things we may like, some of the things we might disagree with, and, and potentially craft this and maybe have George write up a memo for us that can be used as a document, for our own edification as a district, but, also in terms of potentially asserting our voice in this process. So if you're not aware, the first hearing on this will be tomorrow. So obviously it doesn't give us time to sort of pass a resolution and, submit it before council. But, if you'd like to do so as an individual, I highly encourage you to do so, based on the materials that we've circulated, materials that you may have on your own. So I've been working with Kavitha on this issue pretty closely, and this sort of fits hat in hand with the strategic planning committee. And sort of the idea that I was having for this evening is this would be sort of a primer discussion, and that in a further discussion, would continue within her committee, in depth as sort of as she sees fit. One of the things that we were sort of considering and punting around was that, because there are so many sides to this complex issue, maybe we could actually have a panel, of different voices to sort of, collect together on this issue, but, land use in general. I think it's Euler, for those in the know, it, doesn't necessarily have the, it's so like we can all sort of, not like Euler, but sort of what are sort of our visions of reforming it, So with that said, I'd sort of would like to toss it over to Kavitha. She's has done a thorough sort of review of these materials, and we've sort of worked together on this. And I'd just like to hear sort of what her sort of initial takes are, on these materials, and potentially how we could sort of move this conversation forward, if that's okay.
Thanks, Adam. Sure. I'm gonna.
Sorry to put you on the spot.
Yeah, thanks for that. No, just kidding. But I'm not. Yeah, I'm not going to be on camera because I had to move to a different part of the apartment. But anyway, I reviewed not all of the materials, but a good amount, and I have to say, just going back, I was really excited to hear about this comprehensive plan, just the effort towards it, because I think on a kind of micro level or smaller level, we've been talking about a comprehensive vision for our district, which I know in the past has been done through 197As, which is really what my committee is about. But really, like taking that kind of to the next level and revisiting what we already have out there and seeing how we can come up with something that's maybe not a plan, but a vision. What do we want to see in our district, and what do we need as the most critical aspect? So I was very excited to see this coming up. And I think, in general, obviously, like the idea, the intent, I'm super in support of. I just think there's a lot of details, and I think some of them have to be really looked at carefully, because, some of the things, and I know Anne has weighed in on this too, and others I know have opinions on it, but there's a lot of levels of input on this plan. It's a 10-year kind of cycle. That in and of itself is a little frightening, although I know there's a lot to deal with, and there's like a 4-year, there's initial review, and then it goes back, but also who's in charge and the appointed, not just agencies, but also there is the steering committee. And I have a lot of kind of questions about that. Look through George Jane's, the slides. Thank you for that. That was helpful to get some feedback. And I think I have similar questions that a lot of other groups have brought up, which are, how do you determine? I feel like part of it is just understanding that, what is the role of a community board once this happens? We're kind of going to be, again, an advisory, give some advisory input, and then the borough president's office, and then the city council gives the advisory input to this agency that in the end makes a decision about which plan to adopt out of 3 plans that come up. I just think there's a lot of issues about how do we make sure that it's done in a fair way, and what does this steering committee, there's an overall, I think, 13-person group that's for the entire city, if I'm not mistaken about that. And then there's borough-based steering committees as well. I would like to know a lot more about that. I don't feel like I even have enough knowledge to ask the right questions at the hearing tomorrow, but I'd like to listen in and see what's going on. And we will definitely be convening at our next strategic planning committee a discussion around this, and we'll continue the conversation there. So if others want to weigh into those documents, review what Adam sent around, there's a lot. I'd love to get all that going and invite all of you guys and others from the board to come to that. So I guess first off, how does the 10-year kind of cycle relate to like a mayoral administration term, or does it matter? I know it's not supposed to be a political thing, it's supposed to be more, but it looks like these things are made up of appointees, and how does that work? I guess that's a question I have, maybe for the rest of you to weigh in, or for George to weigh in, or anyone else who may have some take on that. I think Sandy has her hand up.
Kavitha, I mean, and the rest of the committee actually, so George is here. So if you have any direct sort of questions, I'd highly encourage you, now sort of your moment, if you will. But, I think one of the things that I want to encourage everybody is that throughout this discussion and through, reading your materials, please compile them. And this is something that we can send to George, later, as opposed to this sort of being a rapid fire, like sort of session of parliament where he has to sort of respond on this massively complex, issue. So George, would you like to take a stab at Kavitha's question?
Oh goodness. Okay, so it is supposed to be independent of the whole politics of the mayoral elections, and in fact, you're supposed to be really separated from the mayor. And in fact, how long the terms are, I'd have to look that up, Kavitha. I don't remember how long the terms are, but yes, there will be 4 appointees by the mayor, 4 appointees by the city council, and then 1 for each of the borough presidents. And so there would be 13 people on the long range planning steering committee. And that long range planning steering committee, it's, to me, the most interesting power it has is this idea that it sets growth targets for each of the community districts. So every, the 59 community districts, they will be getting these targets, which they have to essentially develop land use plans for. So, somebody else is going to be saying to Community District 6, you have to plan for 5% or 10% or 15% growth. And essentially, what it's worded in the materials is that it's binding, meaning the final say on what the growth targets are with the long range planning steering committee. So, it's an unknown body, right? It doesn't exist now. So there's some concerns about that.
George, may I ask? So in terms of a growth target, right? Like, how would that be different as opposed to just an upzoning, if you will, just like blanket upzoning?
Of course. Okay. So the way it would work is, or the way it's designed to work, as my understanding, and let me also say this, is that, I've read all the materials, I've gone to a lot of discussions. City Council is volunteering to come to any community board that asks them. What you hear from me will be different from what you hear from City Council, because I'm a little bit more of a critic.
Sure, and that's one of the reasons we want to have a panel. So Kavitha has actually been outreaching to a member from the Speaker's office to come, and we've actually shared many of our videos. But that's one of the important things is like to this isn't a one-sided issue. There's multi ways to approach it. But anyway, please.
Right, and so it's not an upzoning. So one thing that we have to understand about comprehensive planning is that ULURP will still happen, right? If somebody wants to change zoning, do a map action and change zoning, there will still be a Euler process that it will go through basically the same process that you have now. The thing is that if the zoning change is consistent with plan, it may be easier. Number one reason is because when the plan is adopted, the city has to do a generic environmental assessment, environmental review. And once it does that, if any future zoning change is consistent with what was studied, that means there's going to be no environmental impact statement, right? It's consistent with what's there, so you can change it without having to do an EIS, which, you know, for most developers and people looking to change zoning in the city and HPD for that matter, right? When they want to change zoning, the EIS is a big part of that. And if they don't have to do that, that's a major benefit for them. And also, if it is consistent with plan, that means optionally, city council doesn't even have to vote on it. It could be something that they decline to call up. They have an option to call it up for a vote, but if it's consistent with plan, they don't have to. And there are some minor things like, I believe, sidewalk cafes and a few other things where the city council doesn't bother voting on them. I mean, they could, but they don't. And it would be akin to that. So, you know, so if you get growth targets, essentially the plan, the local land use plan will identify areas within your community that would become appropriate for upzoning, right? And so, you know, some options may be, you know, focusing growth along certain corridors or certain development opportunity areas where you would see a significant upzoning in small areas, or something that would more spread it out along the community where, you know, you'd have small upzonings in a larger area, something along those lines, right? And essentially there'd be these three. I'm going a little too far. I mean, that's essentially how.
Okay. Right.
How it would work.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So what we'll do is I'm going to call on Sandy next, and then I'm going to call on Wilfredo from Councilmember Kalos's office, and then we'll do Jean, Larry, and Ann. All right, Sandy, the floor is yours.
And actually, I was going to ask Wilfredo his input on this as someone who, you know, is now working with the council, and how you see it working from that perspective.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, Sandy, and George. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. The most concerning thing, I mean, there's plenty of concerning things on this bill, and full disclosure, we are a pre-introduction co-sponsor, not because we agree with everything that's in the bill. It's really a matter of operation. So one of the first things Councilmember Kalos did, and, you know, when he was elected into office, was to put in a legislative request calling for the city to develop a comprehensive plan. The way the city council legislative process works is if you submit an idea on a process, if you're not the first person to do it, you kind of just fall in line. So it looks like, you know, by order of operation, we were the third or fourth person to submit a generic legislative request saying, you know what, we should have a comprehensive plan. We didn't detail any specifics. To what George was bringing up, the concern that I flagged on this is that, yeah, the council will only be required to vote on Euler applications that are deemed by the city, the CPC, to conflict with the comprehensive plan. The other part of that is that if a borough president exercises their authority under the charter to compel a hearing, upon the disapproval of a community board and the borough president. So if you as a community board disapprove a plan because to your, you know, in your assessment, it does not reflect the goals of the comprehensive plan, or if it just doesn't, you know, for lack of a better word, it doesn't jive with your philosophy as a board, you can disprove it, and the borough president can then step in and compel a hearing, at which point it would trigger a council vote. Now, won't it affect the ultimate outcome? That is a question to be asked. Will the city council continue to use the controversial member deference, philosophy in order to defeat, ULURP applications that are not in line with their philosophy or their board's philosophy? That's also up in the air. So there are a lot of unknowns. I'm really looking forward to the hearing tomorrow to get some answers. I'm literally jotting down, the questions you have, and they will be included in the council members' questions portion, as much time as we can get for that. But yeah, there are a lot of concerns that we have with this. It's better than not having a plan whatsoever, but like, up to what point will your input be valued? I think that's a real question.
Well, Fredo, so a procedural question for you. So obviously, I think almost all the sponsors will say that this is imperfect in a lot of ways. So how much can this change from tomorrow's hearing to a potential vote?
That will depend on the testimony. One of the things that the Speaker's office does take very serious in consideration are the comments that come out of hearings, especially on package bills. The best example I can give is the Green New Deal, the local law 197. That's as I know it. That bill went through several changes reflective of commentary that came through the hearing and also advocates. So this is by no means a finished product. This is kind of the opening salvo in the conversation. The difference is, unlike local law 197, we don't have 4 years to get it done. This is kind of a bill that is introduced, and part of the reason why it was introduced so late was because of the pandemic, but this is something that was supposed to be introduced last spring in its current format, which would have given it at least a full year of discussion, a full year of input. Now we're, condensing that. And my guess is that if I'm the Speaker, I'm trying to get this passed by June for obvious reasons, which I won't discuss. But this is something that it's going to have legs. So the more input you can put in, and again, if you can't testify tomorrow, that's fine. There are other opportunities to submit input. Other boards will be testifying from all over the city. We got a clue that there are going to be many boards that are going to be doing this. So reach out to CB8, I believe, is submitting testimony. It's probably going to be in line with a lot of the opinions that come out of this board. So that input is important. And obviously you always have us as like another potential mouthpiece for you. So if there are any questions that you want asked in particular, email them to me tonight. I will roll them in and we'll try to get them asked. We don't know what the format's going to be in terms of questions. That's at the chair's discretion. This hearing is being chaired by 3 people and the Speaker. So it's your mileage may vary, but so CB8 submitted some questions to us. CB11 also. We're happy to take any questions from CB6 and kind of just, roll them in. A lot of them are going to be similar. So whatever we can do to be a mouthpiece, we will.
Excellent. Thank you very much. All right. So we'll pivot now to Gene. The floor is yours.
Okay, hi, thank you. I just had a couple of general observations I wanted to bounce off George and Wilfredo for their responses. One was on the positive side. It seemed to me what this bill was trying to do was encourage coordination between city departments that don't necessarily play nicely with each other, which is kind of all of them, as we all know. On the downside, it seemed to me that the process was being even more top-down than it's been, and there were even fewer options for not just community boards, but communities to have input into the situation that they're being faced with. So if you two guys who know way more about this than I do would respond to that, I appreciate it.
George, jump in. I'll pivot off of whatever you bring up.
Sure. So you're right that there is a lot of good in here, right? There's a lot of good in terms of trying to make people play well together, make the planning processes in terms of capital budgeting and linking that to the district needs assessment. Like there's a lot of good stuff in terms of fixing broken things or inefficient things in government. But you know, in terms of your comment about top down, oh my gosh, it's so right. I mean, so you know what they're planning is this the mayor's office of long-term planning and sustainability, right? So this mayoral office is going to be given an enormous amount of power, right? They're the ones that are going to be going to each of the 59 community districts and doing community engagement. One mayoral office is going to be responsible for doing that. And then they're going to take the conditions of the city report, and they're going to take the feedback from the engagement, and they're the ones that are going to come up with the 3 land use scenarios, which they will present to the community board and ask you to recommend one. And your recommendation will just be one of 3, because the steering committee and the borough president will also be able to recommend. And when council comes and speaks with you, they'll tell you, well, you can pick and choose, you can develop your own. Well, I mean, yes, you could pick and choose pieces of them, but there's no resources in here for the community boards to actually do anything proactively. And you know, this community board has a 197A plan. You know how to do planning within your community. You know, I've spent a lot of time in Community District 11 with and helping with the East Harlem Neighborhood Plan. There are community boards that do this sort of thing, and they actually do community engagement with their larger community. The fact that it's not leveraging the community boards as a resource to reach out to engage the community is a real missed opportunity. I just feel you hit it right on the head in saying that this is very top down. And you know, as somebody who believes very strongly in community planning, and I'm just so deeply disappointed by that piece of this proposal.
That is pretty much the same communication that we've gotten from, you know, our other boards that we represent, and speaking with colleagues and other offices. You know, this is not just CB6, CB8, and CB11 who have these concerns. I think that is going to be the theme, the main theme that comes out of tomorrow's hearing is the need for, and I know it's an overused term, but it's applicable here. We need community grassroots planning. We need planning from the person on the corner who knows what's going on in every community. We need to ground those people up and really figure it out, and then bubble up those ideas, and then figure out which ones are, you know, good citywide, because what's good for CB6 isn't always going to be good for CB11 or CB8, and vice versa. But there are a lot of congruencies that we can find in those community-based plans. So I think that we're going to hear that from the communities that have been impacted by proposed upzonings. I'm pretty sure CB4, CB3 will have their part to play in this. I'm sure the folks in the Two Bridges community will have a lot to say about this. You know, never mind, you know, people over in Brooklyn who literally had this fight last year. Mm-hmm. So, right, there isn't enough community input at the start. I think it's a false choice. Here are the 3 choices that we came up with. It's like that's not the way to do community. That's the way they did community engagement in John Lindsay's era. This is not that time. So I've said my piece. I'm sorry.
Well, thank you both. That was really terrific. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Larry, the floor is yours, and then Ann, and then Sandy.
The ambition here is reminiscent of a time before John Lindsay, 1961, the comprehensive zoning or rezoning, which the city undertook, which was vast in scope and very thorough. And yet the rationale for undertaking this every 10 years is not as clear or even as urgent sounding as it was then. An awful lot of resources are going to be required in order to undertake this once, never mind every 10 years. And I don't know if the commitment to the things which Wilfredo and you, George, were talking about in terms of soliciting from the roots up is necessarily going to be devoted to this in its current form. We recently, or within the last decade, worked on a waterfront proposal, which Scott Stringer had engaged the community in with, I think, a great success and inclusiveness, which we ought to look back to as a model for incorporating ground up input. I don't think that this proposal in its current form provides a mechanism that would be inviting to the community to generate ideas that might ultimately lead to a comprehensive rethinking of the way land use is done in the city. I think it's an aspiration that is worthy, but I'm not too keen on how this is being proposed.
Ditto. Could not say it better than you just said it. So I agree.
Well, I would say if you read the report, and I encourage everybody to read the report, because the first 10 pages or so go through the planning history of New York City it's a summary degree, but I learned stuff in there that I had no idea about. And it's good to think about where we've been in the past and where we want to go, and there are lessons to be learned from what's happened in the past.
I was very lucky to have spoken at some length with Sid Frigand, who was involved in the 61 rezoning, and listened to what the rationale was for some of the things that are currently in the zoning resolution, and the identification of problems which were attempted to be solved. And I think we have to take that approach here too. First, identifying the problems that need solving, and then move toward correction of them if that is the fix.
Great, thank you. And the floor is yours.
All right. Well, I went down a complete rabbit hole on this topic, which was great. And George, as always, your memo was super helpful. And I hope that we can sort of legitimately give George access to the Google Doc where Kavitha and I put our comments so that he can kind of see them in real time. I don't know what the legal.
I think it's fine. It's a working document with questions.
Yeah.
I've asked her to send it. It's just a, a cocktail.
Well, if
napkin.
we can give him access, then, and Wilfredo, in fact, I'd love to send you kind of my page of questions and concerns. And maybe if you could, maybe you could put your email address in the chat. I'm not gonna go through the entire page of stuff, but I have to say, I'm probably, of everybody that's spoken, the most cynical about this. I feel like the stated aim of having more equitable development, equitable growth. I have a little rant about growth, so you can read that. But because I don't know what it means, right? Growth of what? So I don't see any dotted lines between what the stated goals are and the very lightly formed, lightly described mechanisms for achieving those goals. So that's kind of in a nutshell what my cranky response to this is. I do completely applaud the goals, but I kind of wish they were better. I also, just one of these sort of synchronistic things that just before this meeting, I attended another a Zoom of the Upper West Side Naturalists who were having a discussion of a book called The Sustainability Myth, Environmental Gentrification and the Politics of Justice. And the author is Melissa Checker. It was interesting both for kind of what she had to say about how development actually plays out, and what the questions people had and what it reflected about people's level of knowledge and participation in kind of shaping their own city. So I'll be happy to, I think I'll get a video of that, and I'm happy to, share with the board office and the committee. But so yeah, that's kind of where I'm landing on this. I feel like it's a great idea, but what I'm seeing here, it looks like a win for developers to me.
All right, great. Thank you, Ann. All right, so then we're going to go to Sandy, and then we'll go to Kavitha, and then we'll take a sort of a brief pause to sort of reassess, and then we're going to move the agenda along. All right, Sandy.
And I'm wondering if there's a route for community boards to do their own community planning. And I mean, I understand this is definitely, it's a cost issue. It's a resource issue for a lot of boards. We may be very lucky in that we do have some, a possibility of doing that on our own. I don't know how much it costs, but I noticed that was a lot of the comments that if the communities could do these, what would happen to their plan? Does it get thrown into one of the three? Is it considered the best plan because it's by the community? And how does the money to do that is that equitably divided among all of our communities?
Okay, so I can tell you what City Council is saying, or what to that question is that they're saying that the community boards can come up with their own plan. They could come up with this. Okay, let me qualify this by saying that's not what it says in the report or the legislation, but they've been going around saying that the community boards can come up with their own plan, or mix and match between the different scenarios that are developed by the mayor's office. So you like this piece over here and that piece over there, and you come up with a hybrid version. There are no resources that are identified for community boards in this. The responsibilities of community boards are quite small. Again, it's you're not being asked to help with the engagement. That's the mayor's office. You're not being asked to help in the planning process other than as a stakeholder that you will be engaged during that process. And yeah, I mean, to me, and I think this is implicit in your question, is that that's a real lost opportunity, right? I mean, we have all of these people in community boards right now with strong and deep connections to their community and community-based organizations that they could get around the table to help develop a common vision for your community. And that resource is just left on the table. Or at least that's the way I see it. And yes, for community boards that are, that want to get involved, that want to say, hey, wait a minute, and push their way into it, they may have a larger voice than others, but that's certainly not guaranteed, because that's not the way the legislation is written.
Yeah, and to the question as to the resources, well, I mean, Councilmember Kales has been a huge proponent, as has, Gail Brewer, of every board having access to a planner, a city planner, other, professionals in that space that can help guide the board, in navigating, those questions that come up that, we may not have, we may not be lucky enough to have an expert on a very specific, narrow issue of city planning. So you have access to a city planner. So those resources really have to come as part of, part of the district needs, really. If you really think about it now, CB6, CB8, CB11, they've identified that as a need in years past. And that's why the elected officials have gone together and, some money has been dedicated to that, or if there's a specific land use issue that comes up, but not every board has that. So, there does need to be some sort of, money set aside to help, if you really want the community's input, then give them all the tools that they need. If one of those tools is having planning professionals there, so be it. So sorry, George, I'm plugging your industry.
Oh,
but
no, heck no. I mean, listen, what I would say, I'll build on that. I mean, I would like the planners to get out of DCP downtown, and I would love a staff planner on every community board. That would be on staff. I think it would be fantastic. I know in CB1 they have somebody that does that. And I recently did work down there, and I thought it was fantastic. It was great to have that sort of dedicated resource there. I help different community boards out, but man, I wish I wasn't needed, frankly. It'd be great if there were those resources that were already within the community. And frankly, let's just say this is that I'm not sure just a one person is going to help you do a local. I mean, they'll help do a local community-based plan, but you're going to need more resources in addition to that. But it would be great to have somebody to help manage those resources to develop that plan.
Great. All right, Kavitha, the floor is yours.
Thanks. Yeah, just jumping off that point that you just made, George and Wilfredo, I think same thing that I come up with is community boards. We have all these dedicated people and professionals and community residents, and why not, instead of this other level of bureaucracy on top of that, why not create this as a resource? Like if there is this sort of steering committee, why not instead be a group of people that we could, as community boards, could all tap into, not one for one necessarily, like have a planner, but have a group, a team of experts, that cover the bases of what each community board would really need. I think that would be so much more effective. And that's what we're all missing. And I think, there is a call out that maybe all the community boards are not necessarily representative of their communities, right, of the demographics. And that's an issue. And we should continue to work on that for sure. And we don't always have the expertise we need in our, in our members. And we try to, I think, tap into that a little bit. But again, making that a resource rather than another level of bureaucracy that takes away whatever little power we had and then really wastes our skills and the knowledge of the people that have been on this board for years. I think I think it's huge waste of an opportunity there. And I hope that's brought up in the hearing tomorrow. Again, like I'd like to, this document that I just put it in the chat, and it's really not, it's very rough right now. It's just us throwing our thoughts in, but maybe we could put something quickly together. Wilfredo, to send you an email if there's some top points that we think may not have been addressed by other boards. We can certainly do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything that you send, you tell us what you want us to do. If you want us to forward it, as a official communication, we can do that. I'd also, I know it's more work for y'all, but if you come to consensus as to a resolution, either in support of a alternative version or a complete disapproval, like we are happy to to also encourage you to use that that tool you have available to you as a not only as a committee but as a community board. These things, they don't just go into a file no one reads. They actually go and they shape a lot of the communication that happens. If we're doing something wrong, and by we I mean like the city council as a whole, we depend on you to tell us that, and that's usually the strongest way you can tell us if we're doing a good or bad job, short of elections, is by endorsing or disproving something via a resolution. So I know it's more work, but they're important.
Excellent. Well, thank you. So that's actually the way I wanted to close on. So I think we've had a very fruitful discussion. I know I think I have more questions than answers now. So I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. But in terms of next steps for our committee. So as I said sort of at the beginning, this is not just a one-off sort of conversation for this evening, but rather we hope to continue it through Kavitha's committee. In terms of a resolution, that's not gonna happen tonight. But potentially one could happen next month. We meet this time in March of next month, and then we would vote on it in full board in early to mid-April. Is that sort of a realistic avenue in terms of addressing sort of our wants and needs as a board?
Well, I mean, in terms of the committee process, yes, because after tomorrow, the committee it'll sit in a land use committee, but there'll be a representative from GovOps and the other committee that have to go through the hundreds, perhaps thousands, based on tomorrow's hearing, pages of testimony that's submitted. If you can't attend, or if you're not prepared to give testimony tomorrow, pro tip, you can submit testimony up to 72 hours after the close of the hearing. This is probably going to be a long hearing, so you're probably going to have 72 hours as of like 5 p.m. or whenever it ends. You can submit that by sending an email to testimony@council.nyc.gov. You can copy me. I can make sure it gets to the committee. Just give me a heads up. But by tomorrow morning, 10 a.m., the committee report will be published. The committee report will give you, a breakdown of the legislative intent. Use that in formulating not only your language around testimony if you choose to submit it, but also your resolution. So that can be found on Legistar. What I'll do as providing a resource to you, doing part of my job, is as soon as it's live, I will send Adam, Cody, and Jesus the link so that they can forward it out to the appropriate committee members.
Wonderful, thank you. Okay, well, Wilfredo, you're not off the hook yet because we need your expertise for the next item. But George, thank you very much for your input as always. You're always a fountain of knowledge, both in person and in paper. So thank you for your time. I think we learned a lot.
My pleasure, and thank you so much for caring about this issue. It's really important.
Yeah, thanks. I think us as a committee, there's been a real driving force, amongst pretty much everyone here. So we're really happy to sort of have this conversation. So I think one of the next things that we'll do sort of as a committee is sort of to chart out those next steps. Again, it would be, a continuation of sort of putting down questions and things that we have. We'll probably sort of clean that up. Well, individually, you could submit testimony via the avenues that Wilfredo was saying, but in terms of sort of next collective steps as a committee and as a board, we'll sort of chart those waters in the next days and weeks. So,
okay, great.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Have a great night. Okay. All right. So the next item on our agenda is regarding, it's kind of come up a lot, I feel like in the last several months for a whole host of reasons, but there was a hearing Wilfredo, was it last week? Is that correct? Or okay.
Yeah, it was last Thursday, I believe.
Okay. About 3 proposed helicopter bills here within City Council. So Cody and myself in the office have sort of been trying to keep abreast of what's going on with the helicopter issue. You know, this is an issue that, you know, we've been dealing with in this committee, I think, decades. Lou can give us the definitive date on that. But, you know, it's received a lot of attention of late. And sort of the main culprit seems to be, whereas in years past, you know, it's sightseeing helicopters from New Jersey. And so what compounds this is that, you know, it was always a federal level, but now it's a federal level, you know, cubed. And so we've sort of been, we were hoping to hear something from, if there was any sort of new legislation that was in support for DOT to amend sort of this, you know, nuisance. Let's be blunt. But however, though, you know, based on the hearing of last week, you know, there were 3 bills that were, you know, much more specific to the city, you know, and one specifically was intro, what, 2601 or 2601? Is that the
2026, the noise abatement one?
It was the one.
There's 2026, 2027, and 2067.
Maybe it was the third one. I had it open. I apologize. And oh, is this it, Cody? No, it was the one about the actual helicopters themselves, about having the electric powered takeoff here. Yes.
Yeah.
So it is.
That one is 2027.
Okay.
Now, the important thing about this this bill, and I don't want to like step on your toes on this one, Adam, if you had more to say about it.
Please. No, please.
It's a study. So the electric powered helicopters, they're fairly new. It's newer technology in this scale. I mean, they've existed since the days of RC helicopters on small scale, but in terms of full size operational helicopters that are electric powered, it's fairly new. In fact, there are none in production outside of, you know, either test models or concept models. But with the change in not only regulations at the federal level, but also the, you know, an encouragement to move to greener energy transportation, you know, the best estimate is that by 2025, you'll have the beginning of mass production of these vehicles. Now, the interesting part about these vehicles, in terms of safety, aside from the fact that they you know, this large noise reduction, you know, in terms of, you know, the propellers, you know, they can operate a lot quieter. They can be remotely controlled. They can be autonomous or semi-autonomous, meaning that if there's an issue with a pilot, you know, being incapacitated for any reason, you know, it can be remotely controlled and brought down safely. There is no, you know, that is something that currently is not available. So there's, you know, there's at least that safety measure. But this bill would, you know, would empower or will mandate DCAS to conduct a study on the feasibility of using these as city vehicles. So the city does operate a fleet of helicopters for various agencies. This study would take a look at the long-term effects, the costs, and the feasibility of switching over to that. Once that study is published, and I'm sorry, I don't have the date of like how long that study is, but typically it's a multi-year study. Then based on that data, the city council or the administration on their own could choose to either change policy if it's the administration, change their policies and purchase these vehicles, or the city council could mandate that agencies purchase these in order, or mandate that only these vehicles are used by city owned and operated heliports. So that it's an important first step to moving to an electric fleet.
Right. And so I guess two immediate questions for you. But before I go to that, Brian Lafferty's on as well. Sorry, Brian. So if there's anything you have to say about the issue, you can speak to the borough president's helicopter task force as well. If there's anything you see relevant, please feel free to jump in. So I guess, Wilfredo, so based on what you're saying, so essentially like this would cover the city fleet. So this would be like police helicopters, right?
Correct. Police helicopters. There are also helicopters that are used by other agencies for, right. Yeah, spraying pesticides, the West Nile spraying, things like that. The DEP also uses it in order to do visualizations, live visualizations of like what's going on with coastal zone erosion, things like that. So they're used for a lot of different purposes.
Okay, excellent. Sandy, I saw your hand up.
Sorry, just for the minutes, which bill are we talking about?
Yeah. Intro 2027 of 2020.
Thank you.
Okay, and Brian just said he has nothing more to add. Well, if you do, don't be shy. So, okay. Lou, I keep seeing your hand go up and down. So if you want, the floor is yours.
I'd like to get hold of the legislative memorandums on all three bills. If Cody or Wilfredo could email those or to me tomorrow, I'll read them carefully. I apologize for coming to the meeting late. That was a bit of a glitch. But I would like to be involved, obviously, in the helicopters since I've been working on that issue for a long time.
We know this is your issue.
Yeah, I mean, frankly, Lou, when we made the roll call and you weren't here, I got a little nervous. I was like, "This is Lou's topic."
Adam, the link to the memorandum, the committee report is actually in the same Legistar. It'll say committee report, and then it'll have the date from last week's hearing. I would also link the testimony because it's instructive to read what the city thinks about these bills. So the admin testimony is really instructive as well. So you can kind of get a sense of how they look at it.
As much as you think is going to be appropriate, I'd be happy to see. The other is there's a couple of side issues. There is something out there called an Osprey, which is a tilt wing airplane that is now in civilian production. It has been used by the Marine Corps for many years. And that's going to change the whole perception of what helicopters and short landing craft are, and it's something that perhaps we ought to include in this discussion, because I think over the course of the next few years, they're going to be replacing helicopters. They have greater capacity and greater flexibility. So I think that that would be a helpful addition to the discussion. And the other is that electric airplanes there is in fact a passenger airplane, a small passenger airplane, think in the terms of Piper Cubs, in Europe that is now in production, and it's electrically driven. And there are American manufacturers who are starting to develop the same technology. And that's related to the emergence of electric automobiles. It's all of a parcel. And I think that perhaps there ought to be a somewhat broader outlook in terms of what the change in propulsion, noise, and utility is going to be. It cuts across a lot of boundaries.
Yeah, Lou, to the point of the Ospreys, I've been unfortunately in like close vicinity of one of these taking off during a military show. They're loud. They're the loudest thing like I've ever heard. If they're being produced by civilians, I think that kind of plays into another one of the bills in this package. It's a bill that it's intro 2026, and this bill basically limits taking off and landing. So any operation taking off and landing from city-owned heliports to only be allowed for what's called stage 3 noise emissions vehicles. This is the lowest noise threshold of any helicopter. Currently, there's only one model. It's a Sikorsky model that currently meets this, this noise level, but major manufacturers are moving to this, this type of design that will limit noise. And look, it's still going to be helicopters, it's going to be loud, but it's not as loud as say an Osprey, which will literally rattle windows. It can break a single pane of glass at like 100 feet from what I recall reading.
Just what we need in the city is that kind of a racket. But if I could see that stuff, I'd love to read it.
Yeah.
If there's going to be a helicopter task force, which I think is a good idea, we ought to be actively involved in it.
The borough president convened one last year. It's still active. It's multi-leveled, multi-state. She strong-armed New Jersey and Connecticut to come to the table, along with representatives from the FAA, the state, and city. So I believe Molly may have been a representative there, or someone from CB6. But
I sat in one of the meetings.
Yeah,
it was a lot.
Yeah, no, it was.
Yeah. Okay, Anne, the floor is yours.
Okay, so I was actually also going to question the relationship between electric and quiet, which I just don't know enough about the aerodynamics, nor do I know enough if like remote control of any kind of aircraft would ever have stopped an accident from happening. So I thought like it's kind of an interesting idea, but I don't know if we look historically, would that have ever made a difference? And just like the last point, I almost really don't want to say this, but it's a semantic issue, like to call electric energy, to call them, because they are electric powered, to call them clean energy, I think is problematic, because if that's powered by, coal, it's like you're talking about, there's a distinction between the point of production and like point pollution. It may change that, but it is not necessarily changing the amount of CO2 that's going into the atmosphere. So
no, I agree. I stand corrected. You're right.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. It's point pollution. There's less emissions, but we still have to we have to concern ourselves with how the energy is getting into the battery cell, and that's where we still have carbon production
and the efficiency of
the actual battery storage.
All those things.
Yeah. So, and I stand corrected.
Sorry.
I will be more cognizant of how I refer to it. But thank you.
All right. So I guess the last question I have, Anne, you have another question?
No, that was
okay. So thank you again, Wilfredo. You've been an asset for two topics. So that's whatever sort of award we give out in this committee.
Hey, it's not every day I get to be, somewhat of whatever you want to call it on two issues in the same night. So
that's right, subject matter expert. So I guess the question the question that ended our previous item, in terms of, so there was already a hearing, what are sort of the next steps for these bits of legislation?
So all three bills are likely to move as a package. None of them raised any major concerns in terms of negative impact, short of putting an onus on companies that work out of the city-owned and operated heliports, one of which sits right in the heart of your district. Yeah. So obviously they're the ones that are upset about a possible implication of having to buy all new equipment. We shrug our shoulders at that, because the reality is that we've been telling them that noise has been an issue since the first helicopter took off. I think so they're likely to move. We're hoping that at the federal level,
that's a whole other issue.
Well, I mean, Congress member Maloney had had a bill. We're hoping it gets reintroduced. I know she's working still on that bill, but she has other things via her committee. She's very busy. But we're hoping that bill revives, and now that we have a more amenable administration, that we can help solve that issue. You're right. The problems coming from New Jersey, it's gotten worse during the pandemic because we're home. We hear it now during the day more so than we did when we were at work. So especially those of us that live near Central Park, it's nonstop. If you live near the East River Esplanade, it's nonstop. It's an issue that continues to grow. So, I think that these bills will likely move, hopefully before June, but probably September will be the latest that they move in terms of passage.
Okay. Yeah. So I guess because that was the ultimate thing for, at least for the city bills, in terms of writing a resolution, sort of what, if we wanted to write one in terms of support, is that something we potentially would have to act on this evening, or something we could potentially address, in future?
You could take a month or two. Nothing's going to happen March and April with these bills, because they're still going to be going through committee process, and April is a big budget month. So a lot of committees put things on hold until, late May or June, depending on when an agreement is reached on the budget. Since this doesn't have a direct budgetary impact, there's not going to be a lot of, push to move it ahead of the budget. This is something that will impact, years to come in terms of any cost. So that's why I'm hoping it's June, but the reality is, because of the budget, we're likely looking at September, October at the latest for these bills. So yeah, if you want to write a resolution, we welcome it. We're co-sponsors on all these bills. We're co-prime, I think, on 2 out of the 3. The third one, we're number 3. We're happy to deliver it and help push them forward. So
sounds great. Sandy, I saw your hand raised. Do you still want to?
Well, I was just going to ask, should we just move ahead with the resolution? I think we are in favor, and it's the details of the resolution, and we have a lot of stuff coming up in the next few months. So
That we do. Would you like to make a motion?
Yes, I make a motion that we support all 3 bills, that we base our resolution on the actual bills themselves, which we have to do a little more research on, but that we are in favor.
Okay.
A second.
Who was that? Wells, was that you? Second?
Well, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. All right, Cody, you want to take a vote?
Hello, just 1 second. All right.
Thanks.
All right, committee members, I'll call your name. Please declare in favor, opposed, abstain, or abstain for cause. Jim Collins. Adam Hartke.
In favor.
Molly Hollister. Molly.
She might have jumped off.
Kavitha Matthew.
In favor.
Sandy McKee.
In favor.
Wells Magali.
In favor.
Dean Santoro.
In favor.
Larry Shire.
In favor.
Ann Seligman.
In favor.
Lou Sapersky.
Abstain.
Sandro Sherrod. Sandra? Letty Simon?
In favor.
Kathy Thompson? Kathy? Do we have votes for Molly, Sandra, or Kathy?
No, I don't.
Okay.
There's still panelists.
Yep.
They can respond.
Cody, Kathy just jumped on a call from KLM, Kuala Lumpur, so she's
Understood. All right. Well, that it passes 8 in favor, 0 opposed, 1 abstention, and 0
I'd
not.
still like to read the legislative memorandums on all 3 bills.
I'll email those to you after this meeting's over, Lou.
Thank you.
Lou, you can always change your mind in full board.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Wilfredo, for your time on both these issues. So I guess the present question is that who wants to write this resolution? Okay. So I'll go ahead and raise my hand. Oh, Wells, did you want to write it?
Yeah. Sorry, I think I was muted, but I mean, I'm happy to have you do it, Adam, but I'm also happy to volunteer.
I will take you up on the volunteer. I will be happy to assist. I will in this helicopter. I'd be happy to be your co-pilot.
Okay, awesome.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay. All right. So I know we're hitting on hour 2. And so the last sort of agenda item in my head is sort of is to be developed. So again, this is kind of the theme this evening outside of the SCR presentations are sort of a broader discussion amongst the committee of sort of the bigger topics that are going on, in our district and, specifically land use and waterfront. And so obviously, if you've known me during my time on the board here, this is a topic that is near and dear to my heart. And one of the primary reasons I'm on this committee, and so what I wanted to do so it's just sort of titled, a visioning session for the area north of Stuyvesant Cove Park. And so I'd actually like to sort of make it a little bit broader, is that basically everything on the waterfront that's not, currently under construction. So north of Stuyvesant Cove Park to Sutton Place, where they're completing the esplanade right now, and then sort of below the gap, the state property that's below Stuyvesant, Stycove, and the East River Park. And so, I see Mary from the East River crew has come in. So as she sort of presented last week, there's a lot of things that sort of we've discussed in the past, that we've talked about as a committee, for probably as long as that we've discussed the helicopters, things that we do want to see for our waterfront. And I think that there's an incredible opportunity to sort of envision this and to sort of leverage resources to potentially make those things happen. And so one of the things that we don't have to spend a lot of time on it, but, some of the things that we would like to see. And so, whether it be, kayaks is a big thing that comes up a lot. Do we want to see kayaks? What do we want to see, where the water club is right now and the space that's sort of kind of a parking lot, but not really. And then also has sinkholes in it. And, the parking lot that's immediately north of north of the helipad. And I think what we should probably do as sort of individuals is sort of sketch these ideas out, call it a Google document, a map, whatever. But I think what we should do is I think we should take pieces, if you're willing, and just take a piece, let's say that your piece is the sinkhole parking lot at the water club, right? And sort of the things that you would do is sort of a SWOT and an analysis of sort of the existing conditions, sort of the impediments to progress, and then sort of things that you would like to see in that spot in terms of quick wins and sort of longer substantive sort of a plan or a vision. And so ultimately, one of the things I think I'd like to see is I'd like to see a series of resolutions, coming out of this committee forward, addressing some of those issues. And then ultimately maybe something along the lines of leveraging, funds that we have available, kind of in the discussion that we had, with the comp plan, leveraging experts to develop a plan, for a waterfront that's north of Stuyvesant, the north of Stuyvesant Cove, of the state section in between, our two parks, things of that nature. And so again, we don't have to spend a lot of time on it, but I think one of the things I want to sort of work towards is sort of a work plan, which is something that Kyle has encouraged us as committee chairs to develop for the committees, sort of going forward, where we can sort of address these things, not the entire waterfront after a 2-hour meeting, but, chunks of it that we can address maybe, starting in May, June, July, and then sort of going from there. Because one of the things that really makes it hard in this committee is that you're not really sure if 1 month, if it's going to be dead air, or if it's going to be, 4 ULURPs and, 3 pieces of pressing legislation. It's kind of, one could say, ironic to sort of plan, for this committee, but I think this is something that I want to try to do. So if you have any thoughts on this, feel free to jump in, or if not, we can sort of take this offline, and go from there. Anne.
Okay, so I know everybody wants to be done. I'm ready to be done too, but I would just put in a plea for that like dead space in between, 41st and 53rd, where there are essentially no plans other than kind of hoping maybe, billions of dollars will fall out of the sky so that we can build in, ODR around the UN, because how else are we ever going to actually get green space there, or get a continuous greenway or blueway? So I guess I would just put in a plea that we never stop reminding our elected officials and keep it in our plan that it's never going to be continuous until like those 12 blocks are completed. And if we can put some pressure on the UN to help, that would be awesome too. Did we lose Adam?
We lost Adam. That's what it looks like. Cody?
Yes, Adam has fled.
He got so sick of me talking tonight that he's like, I'm just giving up.
Well, while we're waiting for Cody to find, I had my hand up anyway. So, Ann, as it happens, last week I was.
He's rejoined.
Okay.
You got a moment.
I just skipped over you. I was just telling, in response to Ann's thing, I was saying that I just spoken last week with people from Keith's office who actually brought that up to me. So I agree with you 1,000%. And also this might be an interesting time to put our wedge in the door and try to force it a little bit open and see what's going on with that. As far as the UN goes, the last time I heard there were 3 committees inside the UN it had to go through, and it had gone through 2 and then it all stopped. But after that, because it's the UN, it has to go through the General Assembly. And that deal is dead anyway. So, but that's what I know, and that's what I heard sort of updated last week.
Thank you, Gene.
Sure.
All right, thank you all. Apparently my computer died, so I apologize, Anne. It even gave me the frowny face of like womp womp. I guess 2 hours is the minimum. So, yeah. So, deepest apologies. Yeah.
I just figured you got sick of hearing me talk.
No. Okay. So I apologize. I'm on my phone now. So does anybody else have any thoughts, comments, or questions, or we can move the agenda forward? Okay. All right, so I'll reach out to the committee as a whole, and so we can sort of begin to sort of divvy this up and develop more of a work plan regarding the waterfront, moving forward throughout this year. And so with that, I'm sorry, Cody, I'm on my phone now, so I'm not sure what's next. Is it chair's report or is it old or new business? I got in trouble for this last month.
The chair's report is next.
Okay, chair's report. Okay, so not much really to say here. However, I would like to turn it on ahead and create the vice chair's report and give the floor to Sandy, who's been working a lot with our partners at CB5 and the various ULURPs that are happening in the greater Midtown area.
And sorry, slightly unprepared for this, but we have been in contact with CB5 and the new MTA project, and I'm going to get the streets wrong, but what it is they're looking for bonuses based on the transportation amenities that they are going to be providing. And some of those amenities are within our district. And it is rather controversial because the building is quite big and they're asking for quite a few changes based on what they're providing. So the current idea is that they'll present to CB5, we'll be invited to their meeting to be able to participate potentially. That has to all be worked out. And then they being the developer and the architect will also present to CB6. So it gives both boards the opportunity to look at the project twice, and that we would then do a joint resolution.
Yep. And this is for 343 Madison, right?
Thank you.
Yep.
So that's the current plan. It has not been, I believe, it's going through ULURP, so it hasn't been actually registered yet. Once it is, it will then go to both boards.
So in theory, I think what we had sort of been planning in our head is that next meeting would be the meeting that the developers come and present to us, right?
Yes, but that we're not
It could
sure.
change. Yeah, it could change.
It could be a month off.
Okay.
But basically, they will come to CB5 first and then to us.
Excellent. Yeah, because as of right now, so for our tentative agenda for next month, it's basically the big, obviously the ESCR stuff, they're always sort of have an open slot for this committee, but sort of the big item right now that we have is potentially the ULURP. Okay. And then so there's another ULURP as well. This one obviously a lot closer to the old Commodore hotel, the current I'm blanking on the proper hotel chain, but the basically the Trump Hotel. So there's been plans about to redevelop this as well, also entirely in CB5, but it does hug the border of CB6. I believe this hasn't certified either. And is that correct? Grand Hyatt. Thanks, Cody.
Yeah, this hasn't certified, and I think they're much further from this certifying than they are from the 343 Madison application certifying.
Right. Okay. And I see your hand up. I'm sorry if, again, like it's the dimensions are a lot more compressed now, so.
Don't worry about it. I was just actually wondering about the 45th Street shelter because I think they've got a ULURP coming up as well.
You're right. So that is probably going to be closer to May, June. So that's a little bit further down. In terms of ULURPs, I don't want to say there's an easy or a hard one, but in terms of that, it's very sort of procedural in terms of they need to go through the ULURP so they can transfer the city owned property. So it's not the same process, but not quite the same as building a 70-story skyscraper. 70-story skyscraper. Okay. All right. So that's all I have for my report / vice chair's report. Is there any old business? Okay. Cody, if you see something, please let me know. All right, so I'm not seeing anything. I'm sorry.
There's a question that's just come into the chat a moment ago into the Q&A.
Okay.
Lauren Green is asking if the committee has discussed the Stuyvesant Town Generator project already. That project wasn't on your agenda tonight.
No, we haven't. I mean, if it's the generator project I'm thinking of, that was discussed in Parks, correct?
Yes. And I know that the Parks Committee is working with the Tenants Association and other stakeholders at forming kind of separate meetings for that. So I'm sure as we have more information, we'll share it with the public.
Right. And I don't, their agenda should be updated now. I believe it's next Tuesday. Is that correct?
Yes, yep. It's a week from tomorrow.
Okay, great. So please check out the website. And if you have any questions, info@cb6.org. Okay. Any new business? Sorry, I kind of feel like the guy turned into the cat, like all of a sudden just yeah, but not as funny. Anyway, okay. All right. So thank you. All right. So seeing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you all. Okay. With that said, thank you for partaking in this marathon. Medals for you all.